Okay, so diglossia and bilingualism. We are going to have a discussion on this topic, and you may ask me questions during my class, or you can ask the question after the class, and you can have some notes of important issues if you want. So let's get started. Let's see what I'm going to cover today. I'm going to cover what is diglossia, what is bilingualism, and what are the relations of diglossia and bilingualism. So let's get started with diglossia first. What diglossia is? Diglossia is a term which was introduced by Ferguson in 1959, refers to a situation in which two very different varieties of language co-occurs throughout a speech community. That means when we speak in two very different varieties of language throughout the community side by side, like we can call it as a, in social linguistics we call it high variety or L variety. The high variety means the the standard variety of language, and the low variety means a little informal language. So the high variety is learned in school, used in mosque, church, parliament, law courts, government affairs, press and electronic media, etc. And the low variety is used in relatively informal setting, like at home with friends and family members. So what we see in diglossia, diglossia is a special is a way of communication when we use both high variety and low variety side by side. That means whenever I'm in a formal situation, like I'm in the classroom now, I'm talking to you, I'm using the formal variety of language, the high variety of language. I'm trying to use the standard variety of language all the time around. And whenever I go out from the class in a very informal situation, like with my friends, with my family, I start talking in a lower variety of language. Like I'll be talking with my dialects whenever I'm going to talk with my family members or with my friends, even sometimes with my colleagues. So this is the low variety that we use in informal situation, and in the high, and we always try to use the high variety of language in a formal situation. So diglossia, the concept of diglossia is using two variety of language side by side. That means I'm using high variety of language, I'm using low variety of language according to the situation, according to the people I'm talking to, according to the audience I have. So we always actually switch our codes, switch our language from one variety to another variety according to the situation, according to the context, and according to the setting. So diglossia is a concept which was introduced by Ferguson in 1959. So in sociolinguistics, we widely use this term diglossia, but we do not know the term what is actually it is known for, and it is actually known and well known all over the world. And in every society we see that we are actually switching our language from one variety to another variety according to the situation. So what we see in diglossia, that it is the use of the language according to the situation and setting and the relationship with the person I am talking to. Later, Fishman in 1967 introduced the concept of diglossia to be an extended to the situation found in many societies where forms of two generally underlined language occupy the high and low varieties, such as one of the language is used for religious, educational, literacy, and other such prestigious domains, while the another language is rarely used in such purpose, being only employed for more informal, primary spoken domains in the family and friends circle. So what we see in 1967, Fishman has given another concept about diglossia, that in a society there might be two languages. One language is prestigious, which is used in in religious purpose, in a formal setting, school, college, universities, or in offices, in parliaments, in law courts. And the other language is used in relatively uh, informal setting. That means maybe these are two different language. One is spoken in the formal and prestigious domain, and another one is used in informal domains. So diglossia is the concept where we see that people are using different language varieties in different situations. Well, there are some advantages of diglossia. So we'll be talking about the advantages of diglossia. What are the advantages? Let's see. Diglossia reinforces the social distinctions. What is that? By using formal and informal languages, we actually keep our social bonding intact. Now, if I'm from a rural area, so if I start speaking to the people from my to my areas in the standard variety of language, uh, going back to my home, people might think he is not using the uh, appropriate language for them. Like if I give you an example in Bengali, if I come from Dhaka to Rashindi Balabo, and if I start talking in the standard variety of language with my parents, with my cousins, with my uncles, with my neighbors, people might not take it very easily and normally. They might think that I have changed a bit. So for maintaining social relationship, I have to use the language I'm used to use with the people at my area, like my low variety of language, my dialect, the way I used to speak. That is not standardized language, but this is this language is uh, known as the dialect, uh, social dialect, or we can call it regional dialect. So we have to use the language uh, what other people of the society used to do this. Otherwise, they might not take it easily, or they might not feel they might not have the feelings that they expect to have from me. So for maintaining uh, social relationship, we have to use dialect. That means in the classroom, I am using standard variety of language. In a meeting, I'm using standard variety of language. In a conference, I'm using standard variety of language. I am teaching the students standard variety of language. But whenever I talk to the people around my house, my neighborhood, my parents, my cousins, my uncles, I must use the dialect so that they feel that I'm one of them. So diglossia actually make the balance between these two. And another advantage of diglossia is it actually assert the social position and keep people in their own place. Like in Bengali, we have a different way of calling people. Like some people we call tui, some people we call tumi, some people we call apni. So for according to their position, according to the relationship, we can call them tui, apni, tumi, whatever. And sometimes we see for showing the power, some people used to use the word tui to show him in a higher position, to show the authority he has on that particular person. So diglossia, by using diglossia, we keep the people in their own place in the society and in their own place. And this also is a part of diglossic activities. Diglossia is essential for maintain social role relationship and traditional relationship. As I have mentioned a bit earlier, so to maintain a social, to ensure social role relationship and traditional relationship, we must use diglossia, because suddenly if you see all the people of Bangladesh are started speaking in standard variety of Bengali, then you will be losing the traditional relationship with the people. If everybody starts talking in standard variety of language, it may be we may be losing the traditional relationship that we have and the cultural diversity that we have in different parts of the country, and the language diversity, the dialects, the register that we use. These all will be removed if we all start talking in standard variety of language. So diglossia is essential for maintaining social role relationship. That means the way I speak to one of my friends in a very informal way, and on the other hand, whenever I'm talking to my senior, or to my sir, or with my students in a class, I used to speak the standard variety of language. That is, this is the relationship, the formal relationship that I have with my students, the formal relationship that I have with one of the delegates coming from somewhere else. So I am using the standard variety of language with the unknown person, or in a formal setting, I'm using the standard variety of language. But whenever I'm talking to someone very close to me, I become informal and I start talking in informal way with them. Uh, like maybe you are in a very important meeting, uh, one of your friend or one of your neighbors called you, and you received the call, and you have started talking with the lower variety of language with him. But whenever you just uh, put down the phone, you again switch your code to the high variety of language. Like, yes, what we are talking about, but in a few minutes earlier you were talking about the in a very informal way with someone else over phone. But whenever you cut the phone, you have started talking with the standard variety of language. So this is how we actually maintain social role relationship using diglossia. And I believe that it should diglossia and the high variety and low variety of the language should be continued for preserving our culture, for preserving our relationship, for preserving our language. Because if we stop using the local variety of language, that is dialect, then the language will die out. Because language lives with the use. So if nobody uses the language, that the variety of language, the language will eventually die out, because no one is using that. And after a few years, nobody will be even remembering the language, and there will be no use of that language, and finally the language will die out. So there is a strong relationship between language and society, and a language lives in the use of the people. As long as the society is using the language is alive, the language is lively, the language is changing. But whenever a society stopped using any particular language, the language will die out. So diglossia should continue for a diglossia situation should continue for the survival of that particular language. And we have seen the advantages of diglossia. Now, now we can get started with bilingualism. What bilingualism is actually? Do you have any idea about bilingualism? What does bilingualism mean? Well, the term bilingualism simply refers to using or being able to use two languages, especially with equal or nearly equal competency and fluency. When a person is able to use more than one language or two languages, especially with equal fluency, accuracy, then we call it bilingualism. Whenever a person is able to use more than one language with equal fluency and accuracy, we call it bilingualism. The person involved in this activity is called bilingual. That means the person who is using both the languages uh, in his speech or in his communication, uh, this person is called bilingual person. And we see many of us used to use bilingualism, uh, uh, and so many of we are bilingual person. Like we are able to use English language, we are able to use Bengali language side by side with equal fluency and accuracy. And sometimes we switch our code from Bengali to English, English to Bengali. So this switching of codes is the activity of a bilingual person. A bilingual person switches his code from one language to another, and he is capable of using more than one language with equal fluency and accuracy. And the person who is able to do this is as a bilingual person. And the term bilingualism is the concept of using more than one language with equal fluency and accuracy. So many of you are bilingual person here because many of you can speak Bengali and English with equal fluency and accuracy, with competency. So many of we here are bilingual person. There are some advantages of bilingualism. Let's get started with the advantages of bilingualism. Baker and Jones in 1998 propound that there are three kinds of advantages of bilingualism. What are these? Communicative advantages, number one. Number two, cultural advantages. And number three, cognitive advantages. So basically there are three advantages, uh, main three advantages: communicative advantages, cultural advantages, and cognitive advantages. Now let's have a look at this, that how these are the, how bilingualism actually uh, uh, helping us in communication, in culture, and is in cognitive. So let's see. Uh, so what we see here, that a bilingual person, so advantage, we'll be talking about advantages of uh, bilingualism. Uh, Bilingualism is a, let's get started with communicative advantages. Communicative advantages: a bilingual person is actually able to use more than one language, and he can communicate more than a monolingual person is able to communicate. Because if you know, say for example, if you know English language with Bengali language, you can almost communicate with every person of the world who knows English, because English is an international language. And a bilingual person is, as he is switching the code from one language to another automatically. It is a very spontaneous process, and we all know, those who use two languages side by side, we actually switch the code from one language to another in a very spontaneous way, or automatically we do this. So in communication, uh, it is very useful that you can use more than one language. Whenever you feel the shortage of words in your own language, you may use an English word for the alternative. So uh, it is a communicative advantages. Well, in terms of communication advantages, Baker and Jones suggest that being a bilingual enables individuals to form strong bonds with their family members, and thus helps them to bridge gap that is possible to exist between generations. So what we see in communicative advantages, Baker and Jones says that a bilingual person is more capable of bridging the gaps between the generation in a family. Like if you cannot say anything which seems to be a taboo, or a kind of, something that is not very easy to say to your family members, you may say it in some other language. You can say use English language for doing that. that I have got something to say, I'm not going to do this. Or you can say even a taboo in other language, because we, as we use Bengali language all the time around. This is our mother tongue. So the thing we cannot express in our own language, sometimes we may be able to say it uh, in English language. So communication gaps reduces, and whenever both the person or the family members are switching codes, their communication gap reduces in a significant way. Then they maybe a taboo which is not very easy to say your own language, you can say it in other language that you use. So a bilingual person has some communicative advantages, and of course you can communicate with more people if you are a bilingual person, definitely. And then if we go for cultural advantages, we understand that if you know more language, you will have access to more culture. You can read books, uh, you can watch movies, you can see their culture, you can enjoy their culture because you know the language. So being a bilingual person, I know Bengali language, so I have wide experience, or you have wide experience about Bengali language, Bengali literature, Bengali movies, Bengali dramas, and everything. You can reach to every genre of literature with and culture, as you know Bengali language. So the same is the case if you know more than one language. Like if you know English, you can have access to English literature, English movies, English serials, English newspaper, uh, English newses in different broadcasting agencies. You can have the access. So it is also a cultural advantages. So you can reach to more cultural activities by knowing that language. So if you know more language, you have more access to the cultural arena as well. And then uh, in cultural activities, what we see that whenever you know the language, you become more uh, interested in that culture as well. So you know the language, you now you know the culture, and you have your knowledge will be broadened. You will know more things about the people, about their culture, about their activities and everything. So in cultural advantages, we see that uh, uh, we see that Baker and Jones in 1998 mentioned another very important and a very significant things. The bilingual person are more empathetic listeners. So whenever a person is bilingual, he is more empathetic. He is more sensitive. They indicate the cultural advantages of bilingualism in that provides people with cultural information from two distinct societies or communities. So a bilingual person is more empathetic. So we understand the difference between empathy and sympathy. Sympathy is just showing that I'm sorry for this, but empathy is actually feeling what the person is feeling. So a bilingual person is more empathetic than a monolingual person, because he can feel the things. And we can talk about cognitive advantages. There are some cognitive advantages as well. Uh, uh, who is a of a bilingual person. A cognitive advantages is a person who knows more than one language. That means a bilingual person opens up the new world in individual mind, which brings feelings of partnership and maintaining and which maintains the relationship better. as as a bilingual person is creative as well, as to cognitive advantages of bilingualism. Regarding cognitive advantages of bilingualism, Baker and Jones denotes that being a bilingual person uh, is more creative, and he is more flexible, and his area of thinking is more elaborate. He can elaborate his thinking areas because of bilingual person. Further, Baker in 2000 mentions that bilingual always have superiority in concept formation compared to monolingual person. And in 2000, uh, Baker again says that a bilingual person is uh, has superiority over the monolingual person because he can create and create more concepts, he can format more concepts, and his way of thinking is broadened. And if you talk about cognitive understanding, as we have uh, LAD, language acquisition device, in our brain. So a bilingual person LAD, language acquisition device, is more active than a monolingual person. And it is also scientifically proven. Once a learner learn a language, the second language, learning the third and fourth language becomes so easy for him. So these are the cognitive advantages of bilingualism. I hope you understand the advantages of bilingualism. And definitely, if you have any question, you can ask me now, or you can note it down. You can ask me at the end of the class. Well, so now we'll talk about relations of diglossia to bilingualism. There are basically three relations of diglossia to bilingualism. Let's see what are these. There are three sets of relationship between diglossia and bilingualism. Number one, diglossia alone. Number two, bilingualism alone. And finally, both diglossia and bilingualism. Let's see what are these. Diglossia alone, that means there will be no bilingualism at all. In the first set, what we see, it seems to be essentially precondition for the existence of diglossia without bilingualism, that a relatively rigid society system exists in which group membership is achieved by birth and which cannot be easily lost. That means in some rigid societies, there is only bilingualism. There is, only diglossia. There is no bilingualism at all. This is diglossia, that there are some societies which are very rigid. They do not allow their people to learn any other language. Like we see, Saudi Arabia is a very rigid society, but recently they have allowed to learn English. We see German, they are also very rigid. They do not allow any other language to be taught or to be learned. China, Japan, they also were very rigid even a few decades earlier, but now they are allowing English to be taught and learned. So in this kind of rigid societies where there is no other languages to actually to learn, these people only use diglossia, and only diglossic situation happens because these countries have only one language. They do not know any other language, so there is no possibility of bilingualism in those countries. So these people only use the high variety of language and the low variety of language. That means in a formal settings, they use the standard variety of language, and in an informal situation, they use their dialects uh, or or the lower variety of language. So this is diglossia alone, the society which are rigid and no other language is being taught and learned. In those areas or in those countries, only diglossia happens because they know only one language, and they know the standard variety of language and the lower variety of language, age variety and low variety. Now, if we talk about bilingualism alone, then what we see, sorry, bilingualism alone is when a person is using two languages with equal prestige and equal fluency, that is bilingualism, uh, uh, bilingualism alone. If a country allows two languages as their official languages, then bilingualism alone happens. Bilingualism without diglossia exists in the person who use two first languages enjoying equal prestige or national official status. So whenever a person is enjoying uh, both the languages, using both the languages with equal prestige, and the language is used officially, both the languages being used officially, then bilingualism alone. Like uh, in this context, the user of the language will not be learning the lower variety of the language, of any language. So the person who bilingualism alone means the person who is using standard language of both the languages. Say for example, a person in India using English and using uh, Hindi side by side, because both the languages are official. In fact, they have 22 official languages. So in those areas, uh, bilingualism happens. There are many cosmopolitan areas in the world where different languages are uh, being used with equal prestige uh, and equal dignity. So in those areas, bilingualism happens, that a person can use both the languages with equal prestige and equal with equal freedom. So these areas or these situations are called bilingualism alone. Remember, there is no lower variety of language. Both the languages are, standardized, and both the languages are of equal prestige. So there is no diglossia whatsoever in those countries where bilingualism alone happens. Now let's come to the third and final one, that is both diglossia and bilingualism. In a society, in a country where people are using diglossia and bilingualism side by side, like you can take an example of yourself, or you can take an example of myself. Myself, I'm using diglossia and bilingualism both. Like I am, whenever I am in a informal situation, I am using diglossia. That means I'm using Bengali in a formal situation, standard Bengali language. And whenever I'm going back to my home, I am using the lower variety of language of Bengali. And whenever I am in the class, I am switching my code to English. That means I am using English in the classroom, in a formal setting, in a meeting, or anywhere necessary. I'm using English. But when I feel that English is not required here, only Bengali can be used. In an informal situation, I use the standard variety of language. And in an informal situation, with my friends, with my family members, with my neighbors, I use the lower variety of Bengali. That means two things are happening here. Diglossia, sometimes I'm using standard variety of language where situation demands, and sometimes I'm using the lower variety of language where situation demands, and sometimes I'm using English. That means I'm changing my language from Bengali to English according to the needs. So here, as a person, I am both diglossic person and bilingual person. Both. I'm using Bengali, standard variety of language, lower variety of language, and of course, sometimes I am using English as my language. So here we see diglossia and bilingualism is happening side by side, right? So here we see here we see that I am a bilingual person as well as I am a diglossic person as well, because I am using both the language side by side. Now, this is really very interesting, isn't it? Yes. Finally, so let's what we see that both diglossia and bilingualism parallel in the situation where large part of the people can operate in more than one nationally recognized and acknowledged code, and which not only give rise to the functional division between the codes, but a common purpose. So here, here we see that whenever people are using uh, diglossia and bilingualism parallelly, this situation is both diglossia and bilingualism. So this was all about uh, diglossia and bilingualism and relationship of diglossia and bilingualism. I would like to sum it up in 2 minutes. First one, diglossia. Diglossia is a situation which was introduced by Ferguson, and the use of high variety and low variety according to the situation is known as diglossia. And bilingualism is whenever a person is able to speak more than one language with equal fluency and accuracy, it is known and it is known as bilingualism. So there are some advantages of diglossia and bilingualism, and there are three relationships between diglossia and bilingualism. The relationships are diglossia alone, bilingualism alone, and both diglossia and bilingualism. I hope things are very clear to you. And now you can ask me question if you want. If there is no question, you can go through the text again, and you can note them down. And if there is any confusion, you can ask me next class. And of course, I would like to give you the instruction about the next class. In the next class, we will be talking about code mixing and code switching, like how we switch one code from another and what are the reasons for code mixing and code switching. So I hope everyone enjoyed the class. I hope you understand, and hopefully see you in the next class. Thank you very much for today, and I would like to request all for stay connected with us in the online classes of Asian University of Bangladesh. To watch my more videos, you can subscribe to Click the Class as well and subscribe the channel. Thank you very much for your patience hearing. Allah Hafiz. Assalamu alaikum.